For decades, America told workers a simple deal: work hard, stay loyal, build your career. And when your body slows down, when you've given your best years, the system catches you. That deal is dead. Last year, 1.2 million Americans lost their jobs. Not during a recession, not during an economic collapse, while politicians called the economy strong. But here's what the numbers hide. The people getting destroyed aren't 20-somethings who can start over. They're workers in their 50s, people with 25, 30, sometimes 40 years of experience. And when they fall, most never recover. Right now, over 40% of older Americans are heading into retirement with nothing saved. Experts say you need over $1 million to retire comfortably. Most have less than $100,000. This isn't about workers who failed. This is about a system dismantled on purpose. And here's the brutal part. Companies like Disney didn't just fire experienced workers. They forced them to train their own replacements, hand over decades of knowledge, then walked them out. That severance check? Only if you cooperate. Only if you smile while they extract everything you know. Only if you participate in your own destruction. This happened to thousands of workers, and it's accelerating. Today we're exposing exactly how retirement was built, why it briefly worked, and why it's being systematically destroyed when workers need it most. By the end, you'll understand why this isn't just about your parents. It's the blueprint for what's coming for everyone. Chapter 1. The Extraction. In the mid-2010s, something revealed how broken things had become. Major corporations got caught forcing workers to train their own replacements. Disney became the most visible case. IT workers and project managers with decades of service were told their positions were being eliminated, not because the work was disappearing, because the company found cheaper labor. But here's where it turns cruel. Your knowledge is valuable. So valuable, it must be extracted completely. Every process, every system, everything learned over 25 years. But you as a person, disposable. The power imbalance made resistance impossible. That severance money was all that stood between workers and financial catastrophe. Mortgage payments, health insurance, family survival. When cooperation becomes a condition of survival, choice vanishes. Companies preach loyalty, family, partnership. Workers experience humiliation, betrayal. Institutional knowledge reduced to handoff meetings. Careers ending not with dignity, but extraction. In those moments, the myth collapses. The idea that hard work earns protection, gone. The idea that experience has value, dead. The idea that loyalty matters, always a lie. Here's what older workers are discovering: loyalty buys time, not protection. And time just ran out. This isn't about blaming replacement workers. They're surviving too. This is about incentives, about cost-cutting prioritized over human dignity, about a system designed to extract value, then discard the source. Studies tracking displaced workers reveal something disturbing. Nearly 1 in 4 older Gen X workers laid off stayed unemployed for extended periods or ended up in worse jobs, making significantly less. Many never recovered their previous income. This isn't because older workers can't perform. Once you hit a certain age, the job market's rules change. Nobody tells you. Resumes disappear. Applications meet silence. Interviews lead nowhere. Because employers know experience costs money. You can't work for entry-level pay. You have obligations, mortgage, life. Chapter 2. When the market closes, picture this. You're 55. Just laid off after 25 years. You walk out carrying belongings and shattered expectations. You start applying. Hundreds of positions. Qualified for every single one. Your resume disappears into silence. You get interviews. They go well. Then, nothing. No rejection, no feedback, just absence. Weeks become months. Severance runs out. Savings drain. You consider jobs paying half your previous salary. Even those won't hire you. Overqualified. They assume you'll leave. You watch your retirement account shrink. The math becomes inescapable. You'll work until 70, maybe 75, if anyone will hire you. Your health collapses. Sleep vanishes. Blood pressure spikes. Your spouse terrified. Your kids confused. This is reality for millions of Americans right now, not because they failed, because the system failed them. Being unemployed late in your career operates differently than when you're young. Older job seekers stay unemployed far longer, not from lack of effort. The market quietly closes around them. Applications vanish, networks go cold, interviews lead nowhere. What starts temporary becomes permanent exclusion. The chronic stress never stops. Health deteriorates. Existing conditions worsen. Anxiety becomes constant. For those still employed, pressure intensifies. Teams shrink. Work expands. Fear becomes the management tool. You work longer hours. Ignore your body breaking down. Push past reasonable limits, not from ambition, from terror of being next. The financial damage compounds catastrophically. Late career layoffs interrupt the exact years when earnings peak, when savings should accelerate, when debt should vanish. Instead, everything reverses. Savings drain. 401ks get tapped early with penalties. Debt accumulates for basic expenses. Depression rates among unemployed older workers dwarf those of younger workers. Suicide rates climb. Substance abuse increases. Families collapse under financial pressure. The golden years transform into nightmares of uncertainty and struggle, and society blames them. Should have saved more, should have been smarter, should have seen it coming. But how do you prepare when the system changes rules without warning? Chapter 3. The Cost Equation. So what's actually happening? Why are older workers being targeted? The explanation is brutal. Older workers cost more money, that's it. After 20 or 30 years, you earn more than someone fresh from college. That's how careers are supposed to work, but from a company's perspective, especially one cutting costs quarterly, that higher salary becomes a problem to eliminate. Older workers are expensive in other ways. Health insurance costs more. Severance packages are bigger. And they're approaching retirement, making them short-term expenses with no long-term return. The way companies evaluate workers has fundamentally changed. Workers aren't long-term investments anymore. They're quarterly expenses on spreadsheets. In that framework, experience stops being valuable. It becomes a cost to cut. This is especially visible in tech. Companies talk about innovation, speed, efficiency, but the data tells a different story. The percentage of tech workers over 40 has been steadily dropping for years. The workforce didn't shrink, it got younger. When older workers push back, data supports them. Age discrimination complaints keep rising. But here's the trick. Companies never say they're cutting workers because of age. That's illegal. Instead, different language, restructuring, realignment, adapting to market conditions. Age never appears in official explanations, but it shows clearly in outcomes. Who loses jobs? Who gets hired? The result? A system where older workers are quietly removed. Not because they can't perform, because work has been redesigned to push them out. The timing catastrophe. Here's why this destroys lives. It's all timing. Losing your job late in your career isn't about missing paychecks. It's about missing the most critical years of your entire financial life. This is when you're supposed to save the most, when salary peaks, when you prepare for retirement, not scramble for survival. One layoff destroys decades of planning. Everything collapses. Unlike when you're young, there's no cushion. You can't move back with parents. You might have kids still. Financially dependent. Aging parents needing support. Late career layoffs interrupt the exact years savings should compound. When debt should disappear. when uncertainty should resolve into security. Instead, everything fragments. In the past year, job cuts passed 1.2 million. That's recession-level destruction during a supposedly strong economy. For younger workers, job loss is disruptive but survivable. They have time, can learn new skills, switch careers, start over. For older workers, the math is completely different, unforgiving. That's why this wave feels different. It's not just unemployment, it's timing destruction. In a system where retirement depends on uninterrupted income, timing is everything. Lose your job at 55, you might never recover. That's not exaggeration, that's reality. The safety net that's supposed to catch you is weakening too. Social Security was never designed to replace full income. It was meant to supplement retirement savings. But more older Americans now depend on it for almost everything. And even that's uncertain. Projections show Social Security might cut benefits if nothing changes. The backup plan has uncertainty built in. How the foundation crumbled. Let's understand how we arrived here. This didn't happen overnight. Retirement's destruction didn't happen because people stopped caring. It happened because the structures making retirement possible were systematically dismantled. For most of the 20th century, retirement's foundation was defined benefit pensions, how they work long enough, and companies guaranteed specific monthly payments for life after retirement, regardless of how long you lived, regardless of stock market performance. Risk wasn't on you, it was on the company. That system is essentially gone. Between 1980 and 2008, private sector workers with guaranteed pensions dropped from 38% to 20% and kept falling. What replaced them? Defined contribution plans, the 401k. This wasn't sold as a downgrade, it was marketed as freedom, flexibility, control. But here's reality. Flexibility without security is just risk. Under this system, everything depends on you. You contribute every paycheck, invest correctly, hope the market performs during the right years, ensure you don't outlive savings, mess up any part, or if life deviates from plan, the math collapses. No company backs you up. Simultaneously, the amount needed to retire keeps climbing. Americans think they need over $1 million to retire comfortably. Most households don't have remotely close when late career layoffs begin. This is where the system's cruelty becomes obvious. When pensions disappeared, retirement didn't disappear. People still need to retire. But responsibility got dumped entirely on individual workers. Once retirement depends completely on uninterrupted income, late-life layoffs become catastrophic. They don't just cost a job. They cost the final crucial years when savings should grow, when debt should shrink, when uncertainty should resolve. Instead, everything collapses. The deal that actually worked lets go back, because work used to function completely differently. For most of the 1900s, an unwritten deal existed between workers and companies, not documented, but universally understood. Simple deal. You give a company your time, energy, loyalty, best years. In return, that company gives stability, steady raises, benefits, a real path toward retirement. This wasn't aspirational, it was structural. After World War II, staying with one company long-term was normal, expected. Workers stayed at factories or offices for 10, 15, sometimes 30 years. That wasn't viewed negatively. It proved reliability, trustworthiness, value. Experience compounded yearly, pay increased with tenure. Retirement wasn't a gamble. It was the predictable final chapter. Today, that system vanished. Average workers now stay at jobs under 5 years. Long careers still exist, but they're rare. Mostly for people in protected positions. People companies can't easily replace. For everyone else, career ladders inside one company disappeared. Now you jump between jobs, take short contracts, constantly prove yourself somewhere new. This matters. The old system didn't just provide emotional satisfaction, it paid for loyalty financially. Pensions, seniority-based raises, employer-paid health insurance, all built on the assumption you'd stay long enough for them to matter. When people stay only a few years, those systems break, stop functioning. When companies don't expect you to stay, they stop offering benefits that only make sense long-term. The result is a massive shift most don't fully understand. Work isn't designed to carry you to career's end anymore. It's designed to extract value while you're useful, then move on when you're not. Nobody feels this shift more painfully than workers who started careers under old rules. They did everything right, stayed loyal, worked hard, believed in the system. Decades later, they're discovering the rules were rewritten without notification. Why you're next. If you're young, you might think this doesn't affect you, that you have time, that your generation will handle things differently. Here's the truth. What's happening to older workers is a preview of what's coming for everyone. The forces driving this crisis aren't disappearing, they're accelerating. Automation expanding, AI replacing more jobs annually. Companies under constant pressure to cut costs. Short-term profits prioritized over long-term sustainability. The social safety net keeps weakening. Every generation entering the workforce faces the same failing system. No pensions, no guaranteed benefits, no long-term security, no affordable retirement path. The only difference? Younger workers know the deal up front. They're not operating under illusions. They know loyalty won't be rewarded. Experience won't protect them. They're on their own. This creates a society of constant anxiety, constant scrambling, constant competition. It affects family formation. Young adults delay children because they can't afford them, can't afford housing, can't plan for uncertain futures. It affects community engagement. When everyone works multiple jobs for survival, there's no time for civic participation, volunteering, building relationships. Social cohesion breaks down. Trust erodes. People become isolated, desperate. This creates ripple effects across generations. Gen X stuck in the middle, supporting aging parents who didn't save enough, while helping kids who can't find stable jobs or afford housing. Meanwhile, millennials and Gen Z watch their parents' loyalty rewarded with pink slips and financial devastation. They're learning lessons that will shape career approaches. They're learning commitment doesn't matter. Companies will discard you without hesitation. Planning for the future is nearly pointless when rules change without warning. Trust erodes, not from abstract theory, but because people witness what happens to their parents, aunts and uncles, neighbors. When experience gets discarded and security evaporates before your eyes, system belief fades. The inevitable outcomes zoom out. Look at the bigger picture. What's happening to older workers isn't random, not bad luck, not temporary. It's the logical outcome of a system that removed long-term guarantees without replacing them with anything stable. Consider everything covered. Massive layoffs targeting experienced workers, pension disappearance, shrinking safety net, rising retirement costs, extended unemployment for older workers, all converging at the worst possible moment, right when workers should transition from earning to living off savings. The result? An entire generation discovering too late that experience no longer protects. Loyalty no longer provides security. The promises they built lives around were quietly broken. But this isn't only about people in their 50s and 60s. It affects everyone. When younger workers watch decades of dedication end in disposability, they adjust behavior. They stop trusting employers, stop committing long-term, stop believing hard work will be rewarded. The psychological contract between workers and companies is breaking down. Once broken, it's incredibly difficult to rebuild. Here's the core problem. If retirement security now depends entirely on earning uninterrupted income in an increasingly unstable market, then the issue isn't individual planning anymore. You can't budget your way out of systemic instability, can't save enough to protect yourself from a system designed to extract value, then discard you. This is structural. It requires structural solutions. The question isn't whether people should work harder or learn more skills or adapt faster. Those are distractions. The real question, can a system that depends completely on human labor continue functioning while discarding those humans at their most vulnerable stage? If the answer is no, what needs to change? The cascading collapse. Where does this leave us? What does the future look like if these trends continue? First, be clear about what we're already witnessing. The traditional retirement path is effectively closed for millions. The idea that you can work 30 or 40 years, save diligently, and retire comfortably is becoming fantasy for most workers. The numbers don't lie. Over 40% of older Americans have little to no retirement savings. Many will work well into their 70s, not by choice, because there's no other option. This creates a cascading crisis. Jobs older workers take for survival are jobs younger workers need for career building. It creates generational competition, drives wages down, makes economic mobility harder. For younger generations watching this unfold, the lessons are brutal. Millennials and Gen Z already entered the workforce during recessions, student debt crises, and housing affordability disasters. Now they're seeing that even doing everything right, the system can still fail you at the end. This is creating a fundamental shift in how people think about work. Loyalty is dead. Why commit to a company that will dump you the moment it's financially convenient? Long-term planning feels pointless. Why save for a retirement that might not be possible? The idea of career is being replaced by the idea of survival. You take what you can get, move when you must, protect yourself because nobody else will. This mindset shift has consequences beyond individual workers. It affects innovation, productivity, how companies operate. When workers don't trust employers, they don't go the extra mile. Don't share knowledge freely. Don't invest emotionally in organizational success. They do the minimum required. Keep real skills and ideas to themselves, always looking for the next opportunity because they know their current employer would replace them in a heartbeat. This creates a race to the bottom. Companies cut costs by eliminating experienced workers. Those workers leave with institutional knowledge that's incredibly hard to replace. Productivity suffers, quality declines, but short-term profits look good on quarterly reports. The cycle continues. The artificial construct. Here's something surprising. Retirement isn't natural. It didn't always exist. For most of human history, there was no such thing as retirement. People worked until they physically couldn't, then relied on family or died while still working. Before factories and offices, most made livings through farming, trades, or family businesses. When you got older, you didn't retire. You slowly did less physical work, gave advice, helped in lighter ways. Your kids took care of you, often in exchange for inheriting land or business. Then everything changed during the Industrial Revolution. Work moved from homes and farms into factories and cities. Families fragmented. Wealth concentrated in factory owners and corporations' hands. Older workers found themselves trapped. The economy demanded physical strength and speed, but society offered no exit for people whose bodies were wearing down. That's when retirement was invented. Not as reward, as solution to a crisis. In the late 1800s, some large companies experimented with pension plans, basically promising that after decades of work and reaching a certain age, they'd pay small amounts so you wouldn't have to work anymore. But these programs were rare, unreliable. Companies could cancel them whenever convenient. By the early 1930s, fewer than 5% of elderly Americans received any retirement income, almost nobody. Most just kept working until bodies gave out. So retirement wasn't a natural career ending. It was artificial, invented, built slowly and unevenly. Here's why this history matters today. If retirement had to be invented once to solve a problem, it can just as easily be dismantled when the system decides it no longer needs it. And that's exactly what's been happening. Slowly, quietly, over decades, the system that once protected older workers is being dismantled piece by piece. Most don't even realize it's happening until too late. The brief golden window. The retirement most people still imagine didn't appear gradually. It showed up fast, under very specific conditions. After World War II, America entered explosive economic growth. Factories running full speed, wages rising, productivity gains shared with workers, not just executives. For the first time in history, regular working-class people could imagine stopping work completely when older. Not because disabled, not because desperate, by choice. But even then, retirement wasn't popular initially. In the early 1950s, researchers surveyed factory workers and found something surprising. Less than half of workers in their early 60s wanted to retire. Almost 90% opposed forcing retirement at 65. Most thought retirement should only be for people too sick or injured to continue working. Just stopping work, while still healthy, seemed strange, wasteful. So retirement had to be sold, rebranded. Companies and government ran campaigns to change how people thought about old age. They didn't talk about retirement as giving up or becoming useless. They framed it as dignity, earned rest, finally enjoying life after decades of hard work. Companies created entire programs teaching workers how to retire, how to manage money, stay healthy, find meaning without a job. And it worked because the system supported it. Pensions guaranteed lifetime income. Social Security provided a safety net. Together, they turned retirement from scary risk into real promise. For a brief period, maybe 30 or 40 years, the system worked. Millions retired with enough money to live comfortably. They had autonomy, security. The golden years weren't fantasy, they were real. But understand this, that moment was never permanent. It depended on specific conditions, required sustained economic growth, required companies sharing profits with workers, required businesses believing keeping workers for entire careers was worthwhile. Once those conditions disappeared, retirement's promise began falling apart. When the economy changed, that golden window quietly closed, leaving everyone who came after chasing a retirement version that no longer had supporting systems behind it. What real solutions require? So what can actually be done? What would real solutions look like? First, be honest about scale. Individual responsibility and personal savings aren't enough to solve a structural crisis. You can't fix a broken system by telling people to work harder. Real solutions require systemic changes, expanding Social Security significantly, making it robust enough to provide dignified retirement, not just barely keeping people above poverty, bringing back stronger pension systems, not necessarily old defined benefit plans, but new models spreading risk more fairly between workers and employers. Stronger protections against age discrimination in hiring. Right now, these laws exist, but rarely get enforced meaningfully. Companies learned how to work around them, rethinking how careers are structured. Instead of front-loading all education in your 20s, then working until collapse, what if education and work were integrated throughout life? Better systems for mid-career transitions, for learning new skills, for moving between industries without financial devastation. Healthcare delinked from employment entirely. The fact that losing your job means losing health insurance adds another terror layer to unemployment. Stronger regulations on how companies conduct layoffs, requiring more notice, better severance, protections for workers laid off close to retirement, and fundamentally, rethinking the entire relationship between work and survival. If automation and AI really eliminate large numbers of jobs, then tying human dignity and survival to employment becomes unsustainable. These conversations are happening, but not fast enough, and not at policy and law levels. Meanwhile, millions are suffering now. They can't wait for theoretical solutions that might come decades from now. The fork in the road. We're at a crossroads. Decisions made in the next few years will determine what kind of society we become. One path leads to continued deterioration, more workers discarded, more inequality, more desperation, more social breakdown. On this path, retirement becomes luxury only the wealthy can afford. Everyone else works until they physically can't, then relies on family, charity, or inadequate government programs for survival. This path leads to a society of permanent anxiety, where nobody feels secure, where everyone competes against everyone else just to survive, where community bonds dissolve, where trust disappears. It's a path toward a darker, meaner, more divided world. The other path requires rebuilding the social contract, acknowledging that a system depending on human labor has obligations to those humans. It requires designing an economy that works for everyone, not just people at the very top. That provides security, dignity, and realistic retirement paths for all workers. This path requires sacrifice from those who benefit most from the current system. It requires taxing wealth more fairly, requires corporations thinking beyond the next quarter, requires political courage. But it's possible. We've done it before. The retirement system that worked in the mid-20th century wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was designed, built, implemented through policy. If we did it once, we can do it again. Updated for modern conditions. The question is whether we have collective will to do it. Right now, momentum moves in the wrong direction. Protections weakening, benefits shrinking, inequality growing. But momentum can change, must change, because the alternative is a future where everyone lives in fear, where loyalty is worthless, where experience is punished, where the only security comes from wealth you already have, not from work you do. That's not a future worth building toward. What's happening to older workers is a crisis, but it's also a warning. It's showing what happens when we build an economic system treating people as disposable inputs rather than human beings deserving dignity. The workers being pushed out did everything they were told, worked hard, stayed loyal, built lives around promises, broken without warning. And the generations watching are learning. They're learning the system doesn't care about them, that no amount of dedication will protect them, that they're truly on their own. The path we're on is unsustainable. Something must change. Either we rebuild a system that actually works for working people, that provides real security, that honors contributions people make over lifetimes, or we continue down this path of extraction and disposability until the whole thing collapses under its own cruelty. The choice is ours. But the window to make that choice is closing. For everyone watching who's been affected by these issues, who's seen family or friends struggle through late career layoffs, who's worried about their own future, you're not alone. This is systemic, and it demands systemic solutions. Stay informed, stay engaged, support policies protecting workers, hold companies and politicians accountable, because the future of work affects everyone. And retirement security's future determines what kind of society we'll be. If this changed how you think about work, loyalty, and the future, subscribe. These conversations are only becoming more important. Thanks for watching.